Dave.
Oh, shivered on my spine. And Mickey on WZZR, broadcasting from Australia for Revolution Radio, on Revolution.radio, that's so good. And where it's more than just radio. So jump in the chat room if you can. I'm jumping in there right now. I think this is show number 361. 260 and 300, like I always say. We're going to finish talking about black budgets, and we're going to have some debunking, which we're going to share in totality with you, some debunking words around the missing trillions.
It also means that I'm wrong again.
Wrong, you're wrong.
That's wrong.
Shut up now in the corner with you. You don't know what you're talking about. It's on air, online, on the line, and on your smart. Is your device smarter than you? Device! So grab an app to listen anywhere or listen at home on a Grace Tabletop Digital Radio. Good question, though. Maybe your device will be smarter than you very soon. That's not so good. If you missed Solaris' show, shame on you. I did, shame on me. If you did miss it,
Steve Richards.
You can go into the... Oh, Steve Richards. And what did they talk about, my friend?
Holographic and kinetics and timelines. Awesome. Holographic kinetics. Yeah.
If you're looking for any more information on holograms, holographic universe, any of that, we have done a whole bunch of show cycles. Or listen to Solaris' show. But Mackie, I missed it. Yes, you did. But for merely $5.95, you can get access. That's a month. $5.95 a month. You can get access to all of the Freedom Slips archives, and you can check out all our shows, including the show we just, or you, well, me as well, missed. So please. Go ahead, spend the $5.95 a month, and you get access to all the shows of all the hosts on all the stations' past archives. So that's all there for you. We would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land. For me, that's the Daruk people, and for my esteemed co-host,
the Dark and Young.
And we'd like to pay our respects to elders past, present, and future. And because I'm a sad person, I listen to Parliament, and that's exactly how Parliament in Australia starts its session every day.
That's right.
They have a Pater Noster, you know, our Father prayer, and then they have what I just said, the paying of respect to the traditional custodians and the elders past, present, but they don't say future, just past and present. But it is a thing in Australia. It took us only 200 years to acknowledge that they are humans. Believe it or not, until the now, it's a fact. Until the 1970s, the Aboriginal people were considered part of the fauna. Indicating the animal kingdom, and the flora, of course, is all the plants. But yeah, they were considered part of fauna.
And they were held captive in zoos. Up until when, Mackie? Do you remember the year?
Yeah, it was I think it was 1910, 1915. It was this century. It was last century, I should say. Yeah. It was in the 20th century. 20th century. And not just Aboriginals, but other native peoples from around the world for the amusement and, I guess, education of the Western zoo visitors. Maybe one day, when we are better than we are today, we look at our time today and think of us as cruel to the animals being kept in zoos. Now, in our time, in this day and age, the zoos fulfill a necessary function in that they are preserving the genetic material in living form of creatures that might otherwise, be gone already.
Extinct.
We have a lot of endangered species. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have a lot of endangered species in zoos, others as well. A museum, and it's interesting because I spent some time with my daughters, of course, over the Christmas holiday break. And so we go to museums and zoos and so forth. And Sydney is blessed with a whole bunch of really good institutions and venues like that. But my point is that we went to the Australian Museum and you see all the animals stuffed or behind glass, or, like if you're going to the entomology department, that's insects, they're in little glass cases and with a stick through their chest. And it's good. It's okay. You understand why it's there, so you can look at it. Obviously, not the ideal situation, and you hope that most of the animals that are stuffed in the museum died of natural causes. You never know. But it's so much better to see them in the zoo and alive. And I'm not I'm not a proponent of zoos in general, because I think we should be mature enough as a species to let our fellow creatures live in the wild. And it's a live and let live is my motto. But we're not. So zoos are necessary, and my girls very much enjoyed seeing animals in the zoo. We also went to Singapore recently, to the Singapore Zoo and night safari and all that. It's actually really cool because a lot of animals are night active. So I suggest.
Oh, which zoo
if
did
you have
you
got
do that
your,
in?
and I was in Singapore.
Oh, right.
In Singapore,
because we've done the Western Plains Zoo and stayed there overnight for 2 nights. And it's truly a tremendous thing to be able to walk around at night and see the nocturnal animals. To hear the lions roaring throughout the night, and to be woken up by the hippopotamus or the lion.
Oh, look.
And you get the out of band touring around the park as well. So all the people have gone, and you can see the animals. I said the Western Plains Zoo is basically a couple of thousand acres, and the animals live in as close to as natural habitat as possible. There's still some enclosures, but really that's what we should be doing, right?
Yeah, and that's what you want to do. In China, in fact, 100%. But in China, there's a zoo that actually follows exactly that model, Dave. So it's a massive area. And I forget which city, but essentially the guests, the visitors, are driven around in a cage. It's a truck.
I saw that recently.
With a with a very sturdy cage, and so they are, and it gets quite high up, so they're relatively safe, from the animals. But the animals are living free. It is the visitors. It's like a shark cage. Think of it as a shark cage, right? That's really
a fish and chip.
Well, it is, right?
Chip frying cage, yeah.
That's the one. But look, we are where we are, and it is what it is. And it's we have got a long way to go, but slowly and surely we are getting there. And there was one thing I wanted to say. Yesterday, I had an epiphany yet again. And I was thinking about giants. Yeah, I know, Dave. I know. I was thinking about giants, right? And I was thinking about human life and how we're not living as long as we could or should, and then I was thinking about the ancient, I guess, tablets and cuneiform tablets and engravings of the Mesopotamians and Babylonians, and in those you see the gods, and then they're attending human beings, let's say, right? And the difference in size, I'm talking about now, the difference in size between the gods and the attending humans is probably the same
length of his thigh bone.
To us and our children. So my children are 3 and 4, or 3 and 5, I should say. And so the height difference. I'm about 6 foot and a bit, and my daughters are fairly tall for their age, but they're still significantly shorter than I am. But if I were to compare my size to their size, it would be about the same as those stone carvings of the Mesopotamians, comparing the gods to the human attendance. So that's the size difference. So I thought, okay, then you think further, because we've always said, no, I've said, and Dave agreed, so we've said that I think we are children, right? When we die, even at the age of 100 or 200, we're still children, and we just seem old because we age, right? Now, if you didn't age, then there would be no outward indication of how old you are, right? So aging, the kill switch within us, the telomeres and telomerase, we've spoken about this, the buildup of toxins and a whole bunch of other stuff, it makes us age, right? But the key component of aging is the imperfect copying of our genetic material from cell division to cell division. It's just the only thing that could help us there is telomerase that would protect, and in some cases even rebuild the telomeres that protect the rest of the DNA. So it's a built-in kill switch, and the only reason we age is because that, again, the copying process is imperfect, right? Now, if you were to fix it, right, then you wouldn't age anymore, because people say, we can't live that long because look at it. I mean, at 100 years old, the body is giving out. Yeah, but you have to take a step back, think outside the box, and understand that if we could fix that.
That's
if
70,
the body didn't
70 years, Meki, because let me just put that into context for people. At 100 years old, you've been living without the telomeres for 70 years.
Yeah.
So
that's right. Which is astounding, right?
That's right. So they talk about the stretching of the life out to 1,000 years. That science is currently doing that right now, and saying that for the majority of it, you would be as healthy as your 30-year-old self.
And that's really the key thing here to understand. And I think 1,000 years is aiming low. I don't think there has to be an upward limit.
I don't think so.
I mean,
yep.
Right. I mean, if you really think about it, there really shouldn't be an upper limit. But what does it mean, though? What does it mean? So for the most part, living creatures grow. They grow as they get older, right? And the older they are, the bigger they are. That goes for pretty much any animal until they die. So I'm thinking now. So two thoughts. Bear with me. One, I'm thinking that the telomerase was in fact some kind of either a viral dust or something that affected almost every creature on the planet. So I believe at some point, telomerase was active in virtually all higher species. Okay, or species that have fairly complex DNA structures. Okay, and then something happened, and it just switched off. But it was a general switch off for most species, for most, right? Not all, but most. And so so all of a sudden, every creature aged and died. Every creature aged and died. I'm not saying that the creatures didn't die before then. Of course, the accidents, and there are diseases, right? And you could have a violence in your life. So death was not a stranger to this planet. But aging or old age was, in my opinion. Now, if you take it then to the next logical step, and this is where we're going to lose a whole bunch of people, but this is shining side out, and this is the Twilight Zone. Well, it's the tinfoil hat zone, really. It is the tinfoil hat zone, which is really it's just adjacent to the Twilight Zone. But the thing is this: so a creature, why would a creature stop growing? I mean, sure there are physiological limits of your bone structure and so forth, sure enough, but you could keep growing. And we know that, the tallest human being was almost 9 feet tall, only lived to the age of 22, but the tallest recorded in history human being was almost 9 feet tall. It's almost 3 meters tall. That's tall. That is crazy tall, right? But what it means is there's certainly... Yeah, it's definitely a potential for that. So bear with me. So this is actually going to be a show cycle I'm doing the research for now, and I'm looking at human growth hormone and when that is switched off. So if you are in fact not aging and you're healthy and you're living for a long time, why wouldn't, or potentially, why wouldn't you keep growing, right? So if that is true, right, just bear with me. I'm making a couple of assumptions here. So if you kept growing, right, as you grow older, like a spider grows, like a crocodile keeps growing, and certain other animals, and certainly trees and plants, right? So a human being that would live on, that didn't have telomerase switched off, that didn't have HGH switched off or diminished, yeah, we would just keep growing. So these gods, yeah, which clearly in the pictorial depictions of the Mesopotamians, Babylonians, Sumerians, are very, very tall. If they are indeed immortal, right, or live very long-lived, then of course they are tall because they keep growing. So and again, take a step back. Our children start as babies, clearly as 2 cells and then divide, but they're babies. They grow bigger and bigger and bigger until they are what we would call adult size, and they stop growing at age 20-ish. Is roughly when we stop growing. I mean, it's just a rough. But again, why, right? So I'm going to do some research with that as well. But we stop growing at that point. Now, some people keep growing, other people don't grow at all. There's certain disorders as well around that, and other people keep growing on and on, right? So, if we have children and they're certain height difference to us, and we would be the same height difference to our grown-up parents, if you will, that maybe 1,000 years old or 10,000 years old, right? Because they kept growing, and we, being 100 years old, even 150 years old, are still children and therefore have children size, right? So, but if we were allowed to live to our natural lifespan, with all the hormones switched on, with our bodies functioning as they should, and I don't think they are right now, we would be potentially just as tall. So I don't think think the giants. I know a lot of people might disagree with this. I don't think the giants of ancient history and mythology and so forth were a different race or different species.
No.
I think they were just us, right? Just allowed to grow. But now, having said that, though, clearly after the event, I like to call it the event. I don't want to call it the flood because I don't want to give it a Christian connotation. But after the event, some 14, 15,000 years ago, we know that the children. We know that the children of Adamu were all killed off, right? So Adam's children, if you will, and then we came along. We were created, yes. And I think we were created with all the stuff missing, right? We were created with the lifespan built in, because of previous times something went wrong, didn't like us to live forever, and every mythology actually agrees on that, saying, oh yeah, no, we don't want you to know anything, and we don't want you to live forever, because if you did either of those, you'd just be like us, and we can't have that, because
that's right.
There's only room for us, right? So it's maintaining the status quo and all. It's across all mythologies. It's exactly the same, right?
That we'd misbehaved is another comment that's come out.
Yes.
In some way,
right?
We did something wrong. Is the other?
Something wrong. So something wrong in the eyes,
yes,
of those that had the power to punish us,
precisely.
Right? So something wrong, not from our point of view, I don't think. But be that as it may. So this is in a nutshell. I know, right? Yeah, exactly. In a nutshell, but that's the thing, though. I mean, we are children. You know, if you leave us, then what do you expect? I mean, you know, what do you expect? I mean, I leave my children at home by themselves. If I were, I don't. But if I were, then I'd expect the house to be in a right old state, right? And it's my fault. So it is, all right.
Yeah,
and
you're
this is
right.
really the point.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe the giants then are just us, but living a lot longer, right? And it probably maybe like you could say a different, like a different race of humans, if you will. Maybe like the redheads. The redheads, as we discussed previously, but we are potentially those giants if we lived long enough and if we had all the hormones. So I know there were a lot of people going out there. No, you're wrong, Mickey. It's all bull, because of physiological and bone density, and your body couldn't support that. Yeah, well, you know what? Maybe it could.
Maybe,
okay,
yeah.
So
Just maybe. So, I so believe in that hypothesis Meki has put forward, his epiphany. I believe in it because it makes total sense. Remembering the words that they said, which was, you were made from us. And that's been translated in the Bible to end up being, what was it again?
In our image.
Yeah, in our image. That's right. So thank you. So to look like them. Well, we look like them because we are them. We are part of them. We are made from them. And so because of that and the turning off of the telomeres and making us mortal, right? So we don't live forever. That can totally affect it. I can see that the lengthening of the growing years, the growth years, could do it. The people who have been the highest, tallest people in the 20th century, in the Guinness Book of World Record holders for the tallest person, had pituitary gland problems, usually, that wouldn't turn off the growth hormone. And surgically they were amended to prevent them growing any further once they hit some certain heights. Now those heights, once they started to exceed the heights of what you would imagine the Sumerian gods, for that matter, to be, and when I said the thigh bone, I'm talking of the seated Sumerian god depicted with humans at the same height as them seated. So the thigh bone is the difference. To scale, they're the same as us. So you add the thigh bone in and they tower over us. So phenomenally, it's not funny. So it makes sense also, Mackie, that when you look back at the pre-flood, I was going to say joinery, the masonry, what you see are buildings of massive height, doorways that exceed, the height of a human. Yeah, you see these buildings built in a scale that is larger than us. And one of our guilty pleasures as humans is to reduce everything to our scale, to our perspective, to try and make sense of them, and we shouldn't. And I think Meki's brought up a tremendous topic, and I can't wait to see this one through, Meki. This is going to be awesome. So the prolonged period of growth would mean that we would grow taller and we would be more like them. In fact, switching those off has reduced us to what we are. And I love that. I love that theory. You're absolutely, from my perspective, let's do this. That's awesome. And I hope that everyone agrees with that, because if you don't, if by the end of it, I hope that you will. That's really weird. All right, I'll check that out too. So, Meki, what the
I got the permissions.
Oh, really?
I know, right? I was just it doesn't matter. But yeah, I was just you know, as you do, you sit and think, and then you know things just bubble up.
Yeah.
In your brain, and it's all good. But you know, this is really what the show has allowed me to do, and Dave as well. For the past 8 years, we were able to go into depth. You know, do a lot of research and reading into the topics we present to you. I mean, that's because we know a whole bunch of stuff, but there's always something new. Trust me, that we learn every week. And do you know what this show has given me the excuse to do it.
Yeah, and we find connections. Suddenly there'll be a connection to something else, which we did not expect, and it is almost like they've been buried so that you can't find the connections. And only when you start to, you know, you pick it up, you dust it off, you find out what it's all about, and you go, no way that's happened at the same time as this other thing. And I put this together, and I was telling someone just recently about this, and this is that there was an altogether earth-changing experience that occurred around about 4,500 years ago. Just roundabouts, right? Around about 2,500 BC or thereabouts, right? So, you can get in now, yeah. And that event on its own is what we've connected to global flood to. We've connected a massive meteor strike. We've also connected the megafauna and megafauna perishing.
Yes. Huge
extinction level event. Global, not just isolated where we are. We have stories of raining fire and raining water. We also have the end and the extinction of not just the megafauna, but we have certain human species that perished. So Florenza, and there's a couple of others that just got wiped off the map at that point as well. We also have, so there's a couple of bottlenecks that have occurred in our travels. So there's repopulation of lands that became available after the big flood, and into the North Americas as well. So there was lions in North America, if you didn't know. There is the wasteland of mammoths, where tusks in the thousands have all been found. All of them have been washed up until a certain point. Now, we knew the same thing had happened at some point along the Rockies, the base of the Rockies, but the eastern side. And this is up in, I think it was Canada. They found an entire area there just littered with probably 500,000 tusks, and they're all from. And so this is the thing. If I was only looking for mammoths, I would. Why am I ignoring all the other information? If I'm only looking at Death Valley and the creation of Death Valley and those eddies in the rocks, which could only have ever occurred if everything let go at once, and you had like a mile-high lot of water washing through, right, causing all of this, I would only be looking at that Death Valley event. I'd only be looking at the glaciation and the loss of the glaciers, the end of the ice age. I'd only ever be looking at the meteor impact. But once you string it all together, you go, hey, wait, this is bigger than you think. And that's the most important part. So don't be compartmentalized. understand really what's going on. And this is the beauty of being able to research so many things. And then suddenly you go, hey, but that's exactly the same time as this other thing. What happened to the people who built Jupiter Temple? Oh, there you go. So everyone had talked about a stone, like a tools down on the masonry, on this, like the stone building, megalithic stone builders, right? Like at some point there was just a tools down event. Guess what? Same date. Right? We were looking all around about the same date, all across the entire planet, some big thing happened. So, Becky, talking about big things and talking about this, you know, end of the Ice Age.
Nice.
In 2 weeks worth of flooding from a tropical monsoon depression that was started as a cyclone, it just stayed there and stayed there and stayed there. And we've had million head of cattle pass away, died in the floods. And there's a train that was derailed by the floodwater. It was pushed over by the floodwater. That's a train, the hundreds of tons. Yeah. Now visible from space is the leaching of this water out to sea, and it's like a yellowy brown color, like it's a very bright color on the satellite photos, and you can see it in the Gulf of Carpentaria. That's that little cutout at the top of Australia, and then off to the right hand side towards the Great Barrier Reef. Now the Great Barrier Reef isn't used to getting this much siltation, and it's now going to be covered in a silt, and hopefully that's not going to kill that off all of a sudden. That's pretty awful. So the cattle, I've got some friends that live up in Cloncurry, which is near Mount Isa. It's a mining community, and they mine iron ore up there. And the my friend's, the husband was down mine, that's the expression, or down pit. He was down mine, and she's at home with the kids, and she had a real hard time with his week underground. And they were trying all sorts of things to try and build up the area around the mine so that the floodwaters wouldn't, you know, fill up the mine. That would be devastating, right? Take them ages to try and back that problem away. But what happened was the cattle are in huge, I mean, we're talking, you know, maybe 500,000 acres or something is someone's farm, not a ranch, but a station. And there's cattle everywhere, and unfortunately, the pictures that have been coming back now since the floodwaters have been subsiding have been just, you know, it's heartfelt. You look there, and there's so much money tied up in the animals themselves, and to have them perish, but to have our restocking, we're not capable of restocking the cattle to the extent at which we've lost them, and that's going to be terrible on the industry. It's devastating for the farmers. It's something that's very difficult to recover from, right? But seeing so many cattle, and I thought to myself, I've seen cattle cross rivers, you know, and it wasn't as deep as, you know, it wasn't 10 meters deep or anything, and they're all washed up against a fence or something, right? As high ground as they could possibly get. You can see in some photos. But Meki, what was the cause? The majority of cattle loss?
Not drowning, actually. In fact, it was being stuck in the mud, hypothermia, horrible way to go. And because cattle really swim quite well. And the thing is this, if they're stuck in the mud and it's freezing cold, their body shuts down. It's just exposure, essentially. It's exposure. It's the same thing you would die of, Dave, if you were out in the bush for, you know, without the proper equipment for a night or two. Yeah, that's pretty much what happened to those
because it was
cattle.
45 degrees normally out there, or 40 degrees normally out there, like it's over 100, and they're used to that, and suddenly it's 20 degrees. Their bodies are not made for that temperature, and the poor things passed away. It was just terrible, atrocious loss of life.
So it's hundreds of thousands of heads of cattle. Now, Dave, I want to put this in context. Just going to rattle off a few numbers here. We have now become used to devastating floods, killing hundreds of thousands of people. We've become used to devastating fires, destroying thousands of homes, entire towns gone. We've become used to devastating hurricanes. We've become this devastating flooding, now hundreds of thousands of cattle of livestock, right? Yeah, tsunamis killing millions. We are now in an age of superlatives, right? Everything we do is a superlative. That's not a good thing necessarily, because even the bad things are amplified, massively. And for us, that means we really have to prepare for something extraordinary. All of those, we have to, first of all, get rid of the word freak event. It's no longer a freak. It is now an event. It's a thing. It's what happens. It's a normal thing. It's the weather. It's the climate. These are the things we can expect. It's not going to get better. I think we discussed this. In a couple of years' time or so, if we hit 1.5 degrees average global warming, and we are well on track to do that, all bets are off. Our models didn't predict this. Our models can't predict this because our computing power is not grand or big enough to actually compute it all. Our computers can't model accurately what happens in the world, right? We just don't know all the factors. We don't know what assumptions to make. We don't have all the algorithms. So our calculations are all wrong. The one thing I can guarantee you, none of the scientific predictions that have come out are going to be accurate. None of them. Zero. That's my prediction for you. In fact, we know now that things are happening a lot faster than we would ever dream. I remember 20 years ago talking about climate change. You go, in 100 years we're really going to do something. Otherwise, in 100 years we're going to have some trouble. It wasn't 100 years. It was a couple of decades.
That's right.
Right? We are there. We are now there. We are actually we are experiencing today what we warned about would happen in 100 years' time 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Horrible floods, fires, heat waves, rising of sea levels. The weather is changing because the temperatures are changing. We saw an incredible cold spill in North America. Why? Because crazy talk, right? No, you have to. This is actually science. We're not anti-science at all. We're science all day long.
I like science.
But, yeah, absolutely. And science goes a long way towards answering a lot of the world's mysteries. Not all of them, but a lot of them. And what simply happens is we said this last time. The winds. Let's call them. Let's think of them as rivers of wind that circle the Arctic and keep the cold in. Slow down. Allowing, I'm putting it, sort of simply here, allowing the cold, the actual temperature, the freezing cold, the air, to spill out, if you will, into North America, in fact. Into North America, causing extraordinary weather events. You had people freeze to death. What? And not homeless people, they're students. A student in college froze to death, right? I don't know the circumstances, but it happened. So this is the stage. The problem that we're facing here, that all these events, and this is just a thing that's going to happen all the time now. This is not, it just happened and now we're going to make care for 200 years. No, it's going to happen all the time, every year. And we won't be able to predict the weather anymore, right? Because we don't know what to look for. Our old markers are no longer valid. Everything that we've observed over the last 200, 300, 400, even 1,000 or 2,000 years is no longer valid because it's fundamentally changing. And what the cause of the change is actually completely irrelevant at this point, right? If there's something that we can do to change some of that, then we should, irrespective if we are to blame or not, okay? And the answer is not jobs. Because you know what? If you haven't got any clean water to drink and nothing to eat, and there's a hurricane, bearing down on you with a tsunami right on the heel, and there's an inferno burning the forest in front of you, you're not going to worry about your job. Yeah, job security. It'll be thing of like what? What is that? Yes, what's a job, right? Because you're just running. There'll be not millions. Not millions, not tens of millions. There will be hundreds of millions of climate refugees, the survivors. Hundreds of millions. You think it's bad now?
Yeah, you wait, right? Yeah, Becky, I've got an example here of climate refugees. So, our friends have bought a pub in Mendoran. I'm going to get slain for the mispronunciation. Mendooran.
Mandurin, mate.
Yeah, mate. It's when people say mate. Look,
Right.
they're under such strict water restrictions because it hasn't rained there at all. Even though everyone else are getting rain, they're not getting any of it. And families survive on 2 loads of washing a week and 3-minute showers. It's basically a bird bath where you have you fill the bucket of water up and you use a sponge to clean yourself. Now, it's only 1 month away from completely running out of water. There will be no water at all. Not one drop at all available for people. And they're looking at seeing if they can ship water in. They've got cattle and there's no plants at all. It's only dust now. They've got nothing. So I'm not asking for anything for them except for goodwill and good wishes, and we hope that there's a rain event or something that occurs. But this is what we're talking about. When you can't grow crops, when you can't have animals, you can't. There's no life at all that can be gained from living in some place. You'll move, and you'll move to where you can. Now, our country, unfortunately, is, and just as is the US, they're attractive targets. We seem to have lots, but I dare say that we don't have as much as we let on. That we're advertising that we do, and the costs are really high. And if you come here, you're just gonna, I don't want to be heartless, and that's the thing that I'm trying to bring back is the people connection to this. It's okay to say, well, you shouldn't live there, but if you haven't got any means at all and you have no money now because there's nothing left, or you spent your last $1 million with 1,000,000% interest and runaway hyperinflation, right? And you've got nothing, you'll end up, whoever you are listening, imagine a point where you have absolutely nothing at all, no assets, no money, no even identification. It's all gone and lost. It's all gone. And you're trying to convince someone that you need to live where they do. How is that going to be for you? How are you going to be? Because that's what they're doing. And it's not a choice thing. Yeah, okay, so if you argue it's a choice, then all right. How and what inspired you to go somewhere else? Was it choice? Did you have a choice? I'm gonna die where I am because there's no food, no water, nothing. I can't do anything. I've got a choice. My choice is to die or go somewhere where I can live. That's where the choice comes down. And I think, Meki, as we cruise at speed through this 1.5 to 2 to 2.5 degree temperature on average global increase, we're going to see more and more people affected by these terrible outcomes from what they've only done is only argued the cause while the actual events are occurring. It's insanity.
It is. The funny thing is, it's not funny. I think it's sort of funny. It's not funny. We actually don't know what the 1.5 to 2.5 degree average temperature rise actually means. We actually don't know. We have an idea. It's pretty bad. But the actual event, should it come to pass, we haven't got a clue. I mean, it could be.
You and I can come up with some pretty good guesses.
But
the people that are doing the modelling, Meki, this is on your side. The people who are trying to do the modelling really aren't able to put any big number differences into the modelling.
Yeah.
They're restricted by policies in the way that they produce models so that they're truly accurate. But by only using today's numbers or the numbers that they did 25 years ago when they tried to model this, they didn't have all the information that they do today. And even now today, we won't have all the information that we have in 10 years' time when we're all, complaining that there's no food on the planet, right?
So I give you a prediction here. I'll tell you what's going to happen. Oh, here's a big one.
Woohoo!
And this is not a doomsday scenario. I'm not telling you October 1st, 2025. It'll all be over. No. Hopefully it's not.
That quote's going to bite you in the butt.
Yeah, no. So no, that's not going to happen. But what's going to happen is the very first thing that's going to be affected is water, fresh water. Everything that's happening today, all the unfortunate events, they're all pointing to a shortage of water, and there are very many reasons for that shortage. And the most, I guess, catastrophic reason for that is going to be the pollution of the groundwater with seawater because of the rising of the sea levels. Mm-hmm. So the sea levels rise, and when that happens, there'll be inland flooding. There'll be silt and salt that washes inland along the rivers as well, like the streams and so forth. But it will also seep into the aquifers, most likely, right? Mm-hmm. So when all this stuff happens, you've got a salination of the water. So it's going to be catastrophic. In some areas, might not have any rainfall either. I mean, we just don't know. But I guarantee you that the one thing, or the first thing, I should say, that will make people move is water. That's going to be the first thing that will make people move. And do you know who's going to be best off in that scenario? The Arabs in the Middle East, especially the Saudis. Mm-hmm. Because do you know what they know? They know because they're desert people. Okay, they are a desert people. They know that the only thing that really matters is water.
Yeah.
Oil, you can have all the oil you want. Gold, I don't care. Stuff it in your ears. See what happens. They know it's water. They've spent a lot of money on water, on desalination plants, storage of water. Okay, it's there. It's a thing. So water is, look at the people that live in deserts. Okay? Yeah. And then ask them what's important. What's the only thing that's important? Mm-hmm. Water. Everything else we can do without for quite a bit of time. Now, okay, so let's this is the rule of thumb here. 3 minutes without air, 3 days without water, 3 weeks without food. Now these are rules of thumb. Clearly, some people can hold their breath a lot longer. Some people can live a lot longer without water, and a lot shorter if it's really hot and you're evaporating all your water. You can die within a day, of course. But my point is, so okay, if your air goes, it's all done. I mean, we're not even talking anymore, right? Because there's no air that our sound waves would travel through. But air is a given. Right? If we don't have air, it's done. But water, you will not live for very long without water. You cannot. It's not possible, right? And we really should be looking at creating large freshwater reservoirs for ourselves. Because another problem is that the ice, which is so. All the ice in the North and South Poles, that's all fresh water. Okay, you can't freeze salt water. It's all fresh water. So what's happening is that that's melting. It changes the salination levels of the actual salt water, but it also means a potential freshwater resource is disappearing there as well. Okay,
just like California. California's water is 100% dependent on both the meltwater from the snow peaks and any rain that happens to fall within the catchments of the dams in the mountain range. So the snowfall melt is the most important, and that's been the most problem within Southern Californian residents. This is what we're seeing, and at some point you'll be able to grass ski in winter up in the mountains because the temperature will have changed so significantly. These are the things. So, honest to goodness, we just hope that everyone ceases arguing about the cause and starts to truly focus on the outcome and getting the water that they need. Because I know in Sydney we have one desal plant and it's only just been refitted again because it gone out of repair for 10 years. But where I live, I have water tanks, and the water tanks are 10,000 litres. That's significant, enough to be able to live from, and that's all I've got. I as a freshwater source. Now there's a creek in the valley, but you wouldn't.
I'm lucky. My house is 100 meters as the crow flies from the largest freshwater reserve in Sydney. I'm just at Prospect Reservoir. One of the reasons I bought it is because there's that. There's also a couple of ponds, which I suspect if there was this extended drought would dry up. But the freshwater reserve is very, very large. It's massive, and considering all things, this might be a good way out for me. I also have a water tank. They're mandatory in Australia. Every new house has a water tank. I think mine is 5 or 10,000. I'm not sure. I think it's about 5,000 liters. But be that as it may, you also have to make the water potable. You have to make it drinkable, right? I suggest that you buy yourself a straw. It's a little survival tool that will filter pretty much any microbe out of your water and make it drinkable. You can drink from a puddle with that straw. It's good for a few uses. And I always carry one because you never know, right? It certainly can't hurt to have enough for your family for a little while, because they'll just tide you over if you really, really, really had to drink from a puddle. But make sure that your water is boiled up. If you don't know where the water is, if animals don't drink from that water, don't drink from it either. Okay, dead animals in the water are usually dead giveaway to not touch it.
Oh yeah,
if you can avoid it, right? But I mean, look, we don't have any water safety idea anymore. I mean, we are simply not equipped anymore, like in the olden days. Like my mother grew up in the forest, and they had to pump the water. Right, there was a running water inside the house, right? So you had to boil the water. There's a whole bunch of stuff. So these days we see water out, we can drink it. Well, the answer is no, you cannot. In a fast-running, clear stream that doesn't have any algae or anything, any crud in it, you're probably okay to drink it.
Exactly.
Okay, but it has to be fast-moving water, right? Any still water that's not moving, any stagnant water, don't touch it. Absolutely. And just very quickly, sorry, Dave. In the chat room, we've got Comet. Thank you, Comet, by the way, for chatting with us. And this is another feature I'd like everybody to be aware of in Revolution.radio here. There's the chat room, and Comet is a water driller, and he's just informed us that if there were a salination of the water, the second and third levels of the water should still be okay, and that's around 120 feet down, and potentially even the third water table around 580 feet, for example. The top water table, though, around 12 feet, is not drinkable because it's brackish, right? So you have to you have to drill 120, maybe even as far as 600 feet into the ground. Now, if you have the equipment to do so, great. Now, anybody can dig a 12-foot well. I mean, you can, right? That's about, what is that? 4 meters, something like that, right? You could do that. A 40-meter well or a 100-meter well are a whole different proposition, right? I mean, we're talking about major earthworks here, so that's right. Not in everybody's remit. So you have heavy construction equipment in order to be able to do so. So my point stands. The easily accessible top layer water is going to be a problem. If you have the equipment or the means to drill deeper, awesome, right? You're probably going to be okay. And if you've got a really deep aquifer, then happy days. And thank you very much, Comet, for sharing your expertise. So that's a beautiful thing about this medium. We can talk to our listeners, and they can let us share facts with you that you might otherwise not have access to.
That one of the things that we've in Australia we have a problem with, and also on the islands in the Pacific, is that the water table is only less than a meter down to salt water. So if you're near sea level, that's the extent of it. And for the majority of the inland Australia, the water table going down too far, you'll hit salt water, even in the middle of Australia. So it's pretty tough. It's tough going. I hope that you have a multiple layer strata where it can capture water at certain depths, just like you've been saying, Comet. We've only got a minute before we hit the top of the hour break, and I'd just like to remind everyone that this is Listener Funded Radio. Jump into the website revolution.radio, and you can subscribe to the archives, or you can make a donation. And there's a third option where you make a donation, but you get a gift back. You're actually buying a gift for yourself, and the difference of that goes to the station to run it. And I remember Hawk recently had made a suggestion that that they weren't close to their target for this month, and if you can, any little bit helps out. I know I subscribe to the archives. I'd like to get a copy of our shows, and I like to listen to Solaris' shows, and there's a couple of other really interesting shows out there. There's the music. It isn't very long now before we'll be back. It's only a couple of bumpers. Take a break, and we'll see you shortly.
Guests and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and FreedomSlips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, FreedomSlips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Wow, what a good string of bumpers that was. You're back with Dave and Mecky's Shiny Side Out on freedomslips.com, on the #1 supported, I said that twice, radio on the net. So push the donate button or subscribe to the archives for only $5. I think it's $5.95 per month. I'd like to say hello to all of the new listeners we have today. We're glad you're on board. So whether you follow, subscribe, or otherwise, we hope your journey is an easy one. We're halfway through show number 362. Let's make you back. Nope. That would be 260 and 300. That's the show number. On air. It's very close now. Looking forward to that date rolling around. Now, we're talking about high strangeness, and we'll be doing that for the listeners we have today. We're glad you're on board. The whole year we'll be doing that for. And at the moment, the current topic in the high strangeness arena is black budgets. Now, there's something quite special about black budgets, is that we'd all guessed that they were around and a thing. We knew by announcements every year from the US that a certain value of funds were never accounted for, and this seems to never go away and only get bigger and bigger every year as the years go on. I remember hearing Donald Rumsfeld talking about $2.3 trillion. I think that's the figure. $2 trillion at least. Of unaccounted for spending. And that was, I think, the clue that people could take away from that. The clue that there was spending going on from the government that no one could put a finger to. And it wasn't only, and we found out last week in this show cycle that Edward Snowden was able to bring to the public eye the slightest breakdown of where these monies were being spent, into which agencies that the money was being spent. Not a breakdown of, the NSA actual project names, but sufficient enough for us to get a grip on where the money was going, how it was being broken up across the agencies. Now, that was a great start, but Mackie, I mean, in 2001 it was what, 2.3 trillion or 2.1 trillion?
Yeah.
2.3.
Yeah. It's a lot.
it's a lot of money, right? It's a million. That's a lot of money.
Yeah,
at the moment, that was 2.3 million. But at the moment, we're talking numbers in the 20s. Mm-hmm. So in 20 trillion in spending, for instance.
20. Yeah. That's exactly right.
So that's 10 times bigger than the amount that there was being misreported or not being able to be tracked down, so to speak, from Donald Rumsfeld speak. It's 10 times, Mecky, and it's been 20 years almost, right?
Look. Yeah, that's right. So look, what we're going to share with you today is the final And now there's not unless, but the sort of the final argument here that we're going to make, and we'll actually leave it to the bankers to give you the very final word. And this particular article was authored by Lawrence Kotlikoff in association with Mark Skidmore, who's a professor of economics at Michigan State University. And you're right, Dave. It's $1 trillion per year. $1 trillion per year.
So much money.
I lost $1 trillion. Oh, where did you put it? Oh, I don't know. It was in our pocket. It must have fallen out.
It's always the last place you look. Right?
I know, right? I mean, you have to understand that if in currency, even in the higher denominations, I think in America the highest denomination, I could be wrong, is it a $5,000 note? I'm not sure.
I'm not sure.
In Australia, the highest denomination we have is $100 note. Singapore is, I think, it's 500 or 1,000. I think it's 1,000. But be that as it may, even if you're the highest denomination, you're still filling trucks and trucks with cash.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a thing. I mean, when was the last time you misplaced the truck? I mean, I'm sure it happens. You're not going to misplace 20 trucks, though, are you? it's staggering when you think about it. I mean, of course, we're talking about money that exists in virtual space here, right? This is yeah, 20 million rand. It's if you had to, I want 5 of those. There you go. That's it. But it's not really real money that is being I guess lost or.
I
misplaced.
saw that coming. Fiat currency.
It is fiat currency. It's zeros and ones inside a computer somewhere. And look, there actually isn't that much money physically in the world to be lost. I mean, there's money in circulation, but if you lost all the money in circulation, then you get close to it, and you would know that. I mean, all the cash is gone. Where did it go? Oh, it fell into a hole. So no, we're talking about money that exists mostly in cyberspace. And like I said, this article is asking the question if the government is actually intentionally hiding $21 trillion in spending, and this 21 trillion is between 1998 and 2015, right? So it's a 17-year period in which that $21 trillion might have been misappropriated, potentially, right? So this was written, like I said, by Lawrence Kotlikoff and Mark Skidmore, yet again, professor of economics at Michigan State University. 21 trillion in unaccounted government transactions, primarily on defense. The Department of Defense, as well as Department of Housing and Urban Development, offices of Inspector General, reference these transactions as unsupported journal voucher adjustments. That is accounting speak, right? Polite accounting speak for lost, hidden, or stole money. Let me say this again. These transactions, 21 trillion, are listed as unsupported journal voucher adjustments. Yeah? Accounting term for adjustments were small, it would be one thing, but they totaled some $21 trillion between 1998 and 2015. You can buy a lot of alien hardware for 21 trillion. I want to say here on the black market. Maybe you can. What? The origin of Kotlikoff's and Skidmore's column was a report released some 9 months ago. Now, 3 years ago, of course, because this is in the past. This article was written in 2015 by Mark and Catherine Austin Fitz. Catherine is the former, under Bush 1, Assistant Secretary of the Department of Housing and Urban Development. And billions unaccounted government transactions, which were $278.5 billion in 2015 alone, emanated from HUD, originally caught Catherine's attention in 2000 in connection with subsequent responsibilities as lead financial advisor to the Federal Housing Administration. Catherine was unable to secure an explanation for HUD's, which is the Housing and Urban Development Office, lost money and became concerned that something terribly inappropriate might be going on at HUD and Department of Defense, in fact, and in the related financial markets without the public's knowledge. She has remained concerned for years and shared her concerns with Professor Skidmore more than a year ago, or more than 3 years ago, looking at the timeline. From then till now, Fitz and Skidmore have repeatedly asked the DoD's OIG, which is the Office of Inspector General, to explain why it can't account for trillions in apparent irregular, if not illegal, outlays. They have received no response whatsoever apart from acknowledging the request for information. Yes, we understand the question.
That's the end of that conversation.
Recently, a C-SPAN video recording came to the author's attention, in which David Norquist, comptroller of the Department of Defense, offered an explanation to Congressman Walter Jones regarding the nature of the $6.5 trillion in unsupported adjustments for the Army in fiscal year 2015. And to summarize, Norquist says that unsupported adjustments are the result of changes in the property book that can amount to hundreds of billions of dollars. According to Norquist, the system that tracks the property book is not integrated with reconciliation. Though it is not entirely clear from his testimony, it seems Mr. Norquist is suggesting that changes in the valuation of property and equipment due to depreciation, base closures, equipment becoming obsolete, and so on, are leading to enormous undocumentable adjustments. Now, what I'm reading here as well, because I've got some experience with this, now there are two systems, right? There's one system over here and another system over there. Now, the one system is tracking some stuff, but in order for it to be, for the information to be going into the general fund ledger, yeah, a manual intervention needs to happen. So somebody has to sit down. Look, swivel chair. Right? And then another system, which is the actual reporting system that everybody looks at, is not actually integrated into that. So somebody has to do some manual translations. But not only that, it also seems that the devaluation, because it's a devaluation, we're not increasing value, we're losing value, right? It's the devaluation of property and equipment, right? So depreciation, base closures, all that wonderful stuff, that leads to enormous undocumentable adjustments. So there's a discrepancy between these two systems. When would you like to go and have dinner? Green. No, Dave, when would you like to have dinner? Purple. If you don't answer the question in a meaningful way, the answer is meaningless. 42. What's the question? 42.
You're not going to like the answer.
Okay, Dave, what would happen if we were present at the hearing?
Well, we would have asked Mr. Norquist follow-up, not just the only question that resulted in a negative. The report highlighting unsupported adjustments of $6 to address issues related to property. If you were looking at the report, it's page 27. Clearly, $164 billion in adjustments is substantial, yeah. Yet there is no indication as to why properties, equipment, etc., required such enormous changes in valuation. Moreover, the $164 billion accounts for less than 2% of the $6.5 trillion.
that put
Yeah, if you're not thinking about the maths, that could probably explain it, right? It's all good. Why were an additional $6.3 trillion in unsupported adjustments needed? To our knowledge, there are no public reports which detailed explanations or additional data. Furthermore, the OIG's failure to respond of unsupported outlays or $100 note, and she came back and I said, where did all the money go? And she goes, here's the pencil that you asked for. Right? Where is all the other undocumentable adjustments in that return? right? It doesn't make any money, can't be accounted for. Let's recall that this is not simply a matter of boring accounting. Trillions in unaccounted outlays, if that's what is involved here, is trillions of our, in the US people, tax dollars being spent without our knowledge. If that's the case, and moreover, without the approval of Congress or the president for that matter, if that's the case, we're talking about the biggest government financial deception in the history of the country.
I'd say the world.
The world.
That's what.
Yeah, right.
I reckon.
Imagine, look, if someone individual was embezzling the money, right? You would see that they would no longer be able to hide that quantity of money that they'd been embezzling, and would now own, I don't know, South America, right?
Yep.
You can only imagine. Oh, just buy an island. Oh, it's attached to something. Oh, it's a dual occupancy, right? Right?
Yeah, I can write it off. It's a tax write-off. It's okay. It's all right.
All right. So that's just quite funny. You couldn't hide it if it was an individual, and we don't believe it is. We just believe it's black budget. So while Norquist's description of the unsupported adjustments is not the only one that has been offered, some evaluation to assess the veracity of this explanation is possible. Consider the case of the army, for which we found 11.5 trillion in unsupported adjustments over the period of 1998 to 2015. During this time, authorized general fund army spending was about 2 trillion. We know that's authorized, right? 2 trillion. Missing is 11.5, and we'll get onto that. We know from other sources that about 40% of the Army's budget is allocated to personnel costs, and thus was not used for purchasing property, equipment, and the like. For purposes of this exercise, assume that the remaining amount, which is 60% of the 2 trillion, which is equivalent to 1.2 trillion, is used to purchase property, equipment, etc. And suppose all of this spending is fully written off at 100%. Okay, this is where you start to have to put your cap on. For how many years could the Army write off all non-personnel spending and then call it an unsupported adjustment? Between 1998 and 2015, the Army's average annual budget was at 118 billion, of which 71 billion annually was for non-personnel spending.
Keep going.
Where's the trillions?
No, it gets interesting.
Divide 11 trillion by 71 billion shows that the Army could have fully written off all non-personnel spending for the past 163 years, assuming a stable budget allocation in real terms, and then called it an unsupported adjustment. For this evaluation, it seems that Mr. Norquist's explanation does not pass the sniff test.
So let's pause for a second here, right? These are real numbers we're talking about here, right? So this money which was written off, we can't account for it. Okay, fair enough. Unsupported adjustments, okay, property devaluation, non-personnel spending. So that's spending that's not spent on income, right? Yep. So someone's wages, right? So just buying stuff like houses, army bases, guns, rockets, whatever, right? So this would account for 163 years of writing off all non-personnel spending.
Yeah.
163 years. I think this puts it in perspective. We're not talking about an insignificant amount of money here. No. This is something. So for 160, no offense, but the bureaucracy, the American army and such, hasn't existed in its current format for 163 years, right? To spend that kind of money. Just to be clear, right?
And remember that the real loss of this money was only over 17 years.
Yeah. So it's a factor of 10 roughly. So 17 years, 160. So it's roughly you multiply it by 10, and so each year they lost 10 times as much as they should have. which begs the question. Then where did that money really go? Where did it really go, Dave? What's next?
In late May 2018, Skidmore's graduate student at Michigan State University found the most recent report for the DoD on the OIG website. Actually, on their own website. It summarizes unsupported adjustments for the fiscal year of 2017. However, this document differs from all previous reports in that all the numbers relating to unsupported adjustments were redacted. So they're not telling us anymore, right? Stop telling people. You can't tell people about these unsupported adjustments. All right. So it's a big number, sir. Oh, don't worry about it. It's more than our budget, sir. That is, all the relevant information was blacked out. The report can be accessed, and there's a link here, and we'll actually post it in the chat room. We believe the redactions are the direct result of our exposing the issue. That's the author of the document. That exposure was significant. Our prior column went viral with over 129,000 views, despite the OIG report showing trillions of undocumented adjustments. Congress continues to appropriate funds without requiring meaningful improvements in transparency and accountability. The Washington Post's motto is "Democracy dies in darkness." It sure does.
That's what Kennedy said. We abhor all forms of secrecy.
That's right. Except the ones we need to keep secret from you. It is time for Congress and their audit arm, the General Accountability Office, the GAO. You know what? If they're not accountable for anything, does that mean that they don't do anything? To turn on the lights, to investigate and explain to the American public these massive, undocumented adjustments that may be signaling government... Whoa, is that malfeasance?
That's it.
And legal violations on a massive scale. Of course, if they were black budget spending, no one has to do anything about it. Unlike some countries' founding documents, our Constitution does not countenance losing money, hiding money, or stealing money. Indeed, misuse of assets is an impeachable offence. All this said, the 21 trillion in undocumented financial adjustments might have some innocent explanation. If so, why can no one provide it? And why is our government now systematically hiding these adjustments from public sight? I'm not one to see a conspiracy under every bush, but that's funny, under every bush, very funny. But our country's history includes a godly number, a goodly is, I would actually say ungodly number of documented government conspiracies, the Watergate conspiracy being perhaps the best known.
And we took that from Forbes, and again, this was, we were just reading the article here from Kotlikoff and Skidmore in conjunction. It's written together. Now the question, Dave, I'm sure that people are asking is, Mackie and Dave, you're in Australia. Why do you give a hoot about the American government spending? And that's a fair point. And the reason we give a hoot is because America is by far and large still a massive, if not the most powerful nation on the planet. And whatever America does is important. If America sneezes, the rest of the world catches a cold. So it is supremely important what happens in America. America also has the largest defense budget in the world. It spends the most money on armaments and such. It's the largest armaments producer in the world, okay?
In fact, the budget is the equivalent of all of the other countries on the planet totaled.
Correct. And so all that established and being said, there's still trillions of dollars unaccounted for. So for me, it is supremely important to understand, to know, and as it should be for every American out there, what that money is going towards. Because whatever the Americans are doing, the American government, I should say, my apologies, with it, maybe not even the government. So whoever is taking that money and doing stuff with it in America, I want to know about, because it will affect the planet. It will affect the planet, because this kind of money is staggering, right? And it can't be explained. Now, and as the article says, if there is an innocent explanation, all right, fair enough. Let's have it. What is it? I mean, so the next bit here I took from this website. It's called www.metabank.org. The bank, and this is referring specifically to the 2.3 trillion that Donald Rumsfeld mentions in 2001, September 10, as you may recall. So this is the answer to, or Metabank's answer to the 2.3 trillion, not to the 21 trillion, okay, mind you. However, the same logic could be applied here, okay. So so Rumsfeld in 2001 said, "Oh, we can't track 2.3 trillion," which is about right. Because the article that we just shared with you, it looks at the time from 1998 to 2015, which added up to about 21 trillion. So, you add, 14 years on top of that, you get to the 21 trillion. So this is the start of it. So the 2.3 trillion are sort of the start of this trail here. And don't forget, it wasn't until 2007 that anybody would give any information about any of this to anyone. Okay, it's a fairly recent development. So this is what the debunkers say. Now, bear in mind what we've just shared with you, right? We're now at a point where 21 trillion are missing. Are unaccounted for. They're unaccounted adjustments. Sorry, now I want to use the right term. 21 trillion are unsupported journal voucher adjustments.
That's right.
Okay? Accountancy speak. Unsupported journal voucher adjustments. I found that people always hide behind words.
Mickey, it's just like an efficiency dividend. An efficiency dividend means that you're able to profit from the firing of people, right?
Actually, we call it value capture now. So, but yeah,
value capture. Oh, I love it.
Value capture. No, I'm okay. I'd like to present a certificate to you for outstanding achievements in the fields of excellence. Okay. I say, so this is what the debunkers are saying. We're going to give it to you in totality. This has not been redacted. It has not been edited. It has not been abridged. This is what they're saying in totality. If after this you go, oh yeah, clearly this makes perfect sense, I applaud you. But I want to tell you how this 2001 statement of Donald Rumsfeld and the associated conspiracy theories have been debunked. So in 2001, Donald Rumsfeld said, according to some estimates, we cannot track 2.3 trillion in transactions. This has been misinterpreted by many people as 2.3 trillion actually going missing. However, it's really just about the way the money was accounted for. Rumsfeld is asking for more money to improve the accounting system because the DoD is working with a very outdated system. This means transactions can't be tracked to acceptable accounting standards. As an example, he says, and this is a quote from Donald Rumsfeld, September 10, 2001, the technology revolution has transformed organizations across the private sector, but not ours, not fully, not yet. We are, as they say, tangled in our anchor chain. Our financial systems are decades old. According to some estimates, we cannot track $2.3 trillion in transactions. We cannot share information from floor to floor in this building because it's stored on dozens of technological systems that are inaccessible, that's a worry, or incompatible. Now, if they're incompatible, I get that. If they're inaccessible, we have a real issue. Okay, so this is the end of quote. From the start, this is going back to the debunkers. From the start, we can see this does not make sense as missing money. Okay, I'm not sure why they say this. So this is what they're saying. From the start, we can see this does not make sense as missing money. So that's a statement they're making. So at this point, you can either agree or disagree, because I can't see how we can see.
I disagree with their focus, their lens being focused on the word missing.
Exactly. So so clearly they're pushing you in one direction in your mind. So you have to be careful when you go through this. The DoD budget for 1999 was just 0.27 trillion, which is 270 billion. The entire federal budget in 2000 was 1.8 trillion. So 2.3 trillion going missing is absolutely not something that could be swept under the rug. Where would it even come from? For perspective, Fort Knox only holds 0.25 trillion. So 6.5 trillion is 26 times Fort Knox. So what they're saying here essentially is, well, this much money doesn't actually exist in circulation in 1999, right? So 2 years after before 2001. So that's what they're saying. They're saying to you that but the whole budget is only 1.8. So clearly, Therefore, 2.3 can't go missing. So what does we cannot track actually mean? We cannot track does not mean that money went missing. Again, right? They like to repeat this as the first bit of the sentence.
Mm-hmm.
It means that their systems are so out of date and not compatible with each other that they can't track by computer transactions across departments. In order to do that, they would have to do it manually, like I said earlier. The money is not missing. Money went, again, right, so we're starting with an assertion. The money is not missing. This is one of the interesting techniques that debunkers use. They make an assertion as fact. So they haven't proven it's not missing yet. They're saying it's not missing. So at no point up to this point have they proven it's not missing, but they're saying it's not missing. Mm-hmm. So be aware of the techniques being used. So the money is not missing. Money went into the Pentagon and products and services came out. And this is beautiful now. Listen to this very carefully. So again, the money is not missing. Money went into the Pentagon and products and services came out. It's just too complicated to follow the trail of exactly how that happened up to acceptable accounting practices. It's like it's like for a year, you write down every financial transaction you made, then add them up. You add up all the numbers on your pay slip, your bank deposit, your WT tax, transfer statements, ATM withdrawals, new car loan, checkbook record, actual receipts, bills, mortgage payments, blah, 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 all that stuff, right? It's largely the same money going around. Your actual budget might just be $60,000. But if you add up all those numbers, you probably get over $600,000.
That's right.
It does not mean you spend that, nor does it mean the money all went missing if you only kept a few of the records in a shoebox under the bed, made some illegible notes on your checkbook for others, and forgot to report the rest. So this is the example that the bankers give you. So
That's
if
right.
you made $60,000 a year, of course your pay slip is what you get paid. Okay, and then all the bank deposit statements and all that would add to it would add up a whole bunch of more stuff, and it would be more than the 60,000, the total monies in circulation. True enough. Mm-hmm. But then what they're saying here, and the comparison, we're talking about the government that deals in trillions of dollars here. Yeah. It says, nor does it mean the money all went missing if you only kept a few of the records in a shoebox under the bed. So the comparison is being made to the government, just like you keep your records in a shoebox under the bed. I'm sorry. Mm-hmm. But at this point, it all falls apart to me. Let me share the next bit, then I'm going to hand it over to my esteemed colleague because it gets really, really, really funny. So what did he mean? What did Rumsfeld then mean? Okay, he's basically talking about accounting.
Did you skip
the
something?
Money? No.
Okay.
No.
Yeah, good.
He's basically talking about accounting. The money is not missing, just not tracked up to expected accounting standards. Remember the article we just shared with you right earlier. In 2002, the amount of improperly tracked transactions was reduced to 900 billion as they integrated their accounting systems. But that's still not missing. It's just improperly tracked. This is explained in another Defense Department publication. Let me just share that with you. I'll throw it over today. And I'm quoting here, right? In the current environment, DoD has a serious credibility problem in financial management. On January 11, 2001, in the confirmation hearing of the Secretary of Defense, Senator Byrd questioned the Defense Department's inability to receive a clean audit opinion in its financial statements. He went on to say, I seriously question an increase in the Pentagon's budgets in the face of the department's recent Inspector General report. How can we seriously consider a $50 billion increase in the Defense Department's budget when the Department of Defense's own auditors, when DoD's own auditors, say the department cannot account for $2.3 trillion in transactions? Fair question. In subsequent Senate testimony on February 13, 2001, Senator Grassley referenced these questions and continued. These reports show that DoD has lost control of the money at the transaction level. With no control at the transaction level, it is physically impossible to roll up the numbers into a top-line financial statement that can stand up to scrutiny and, most importantly, audit. While DoD may debate some of the criticisms of its financial statements and the size and components of the $2.3 trillion issue, we think that corrective action requires radical financial management transformation. For the FY 1999 financial statements, the auditors concluded that $2.3 trillion in transactions of the $7.6 trillion entries of the financial statements were unsupported. DoD notes that many of these entries included end-of-period estimates for such items as military pension, actuarial liabilities, and contingent liabilities, and manual entries for such items as contract accounts payable and property and equipment values. DoD would further note that the unsupported entries are not necessarily improper and that documentation does not exist in many cases, albeit not adequate for the auditing standards imposed. Now, just take a breath, and then I'm going to throw it to my esteemed host here, co-host. Not adequate for the auditing standards imposed. Now, that was back then. They're talking about the 2001 statements by Ronfels, right? So we're only talking about 2.3 trillion. We have now reached $21 trillion. Nothing has changed. 21. We are 10. Actually, we are 15, 16 years ahead. 21 trillion. And no explanation is forthcoming. So this was the start of it, right? This was the start of it here. And that's what sort of got the ball rolling. But I haven't found anything in any sites explaining anything, any debunking of anything at all, explaining the 21 trillion. I don't think they're even trying anymore, right? Because you can't. You cannot. So this is just trying to talk about the 2.3 trillion that Rumsfeld mentioned 17 years ago, right? 16, actually 18 years now. 18 years ago. So the 21 trillion since then are no longer a thing. By the way, I've just opened up the link, the financial statement compilation of adjustments information technology, December 21, 2017. And there's a lot of redaction in the document, my friend. Oh yeah, there's redacted this, redacted that. It's not all redacted, but there's a bucket load of redaction in this document. Oh yeah. Sorry, Dave. What does so the last paragraph, according to them, tells a story, right? What is the story that the last paragraph tells us here?
It tells us that the accounts were complicated. With 7.6 trillion transactions for 1 year. That's not saying they spent 7.6 trillion. They spent far less. Let's say $0.27 trillion. But the transactions are between departments, so get entered multiple times is what they're saying. So about a third of these transactions do not have documentation, so adequate for auditing standards imposed. The transactions are also for things which are not actually expenditures, but are entries for the values of things, like military pension, actuarial liabilities, for instance. So often just estimates of the total amount of something over its lifetime. That's what it says. And there's 4 points here that they're talking about, and each one is in quotes, and it says military pension actuarial liabilities are the amounts calculated based on the actuarial assumptions that represents the present value of the pension benefits accrued in pension plans, i.e., its totals that will vary from year to year, but represents an estimate of how much money is needed in the future. Meki, I feel like Humphrey from Yes Minister.
Yes, Minister.
I feel like I'm having to overcomplicate the explanation to prevent him from asking any more questions. Contingent liabilities are amounts that the department will probably be liable for, things like class action lawsuits or defaulted loan guarantees. These estimates vary, can last for years, and again, don't represent spending. Contract accounts payable are amounts owed to contractors. We haven't paid them yet, of course. The DoD pays slowly and the account goes through various stages. Here there are estimates of totals of these various stages in different departments. Wow, I'm feeling ill. Property and equipment values are estimates of the values of things that the DoD owns. Things like buildings, weapons, giant fighter jets, fuel, battleships, etc. They're assets. This is not spending, as they have already spent the money to acquire the asset. It's an estimate for things like depreciation, insurance, and replacement budgeting. Now, there's a short explanation.
Just on that point.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, before you give me that short explanation, which I'm sure will be riveting. So just on that, so we have just heard in the other article earlier that was written by Kotlikov and Skidmore that there is enough. So they're talking about depreciation. There's enough money in the depreciation to depreciate for 167 years.
63 years, yeah.
Army spent 163 years. 163 years. So I'm sorry, none of this adds up. I'm sure. Look, I'm not saying that there isn't a bit of I guess loss here and there and this and that, and that things can't be tracked well. I get all that. That's okay. I mean, I've worked in enterprise long enough to understand that accounting is not a perfect world. I completely understand it. When you have $21 trillion. 21 admittedly unaccounted for. Admittedly, it's not like we're alleging this. This is what the government says. Yeah, 21 trillion, and no sensible explanation forthcoming except for this MetaBank here. MetaBank. It's actually great. Bank in Australia refers to BS. Now we say, oh, that's bank. It's BS. I'm glad that they call their site MetaBank because it's BS. It is just not. It's just not even decent or courteous to put this forward as an explanation, because they think we're all morons. Because you read through some of this, while overtly it makes sense, it doesn't actually make sense, and it doesn't explain anything. All it says here, and Dave put it beautifully earlier, the accounts are complicated. They're complicated. 7.6 trillion transactions for 1 year. That's complicated stuff, right? But it's someone's job. No one is getting fired here. And this is really the thing that I find most amazing. When it came to missing 2.3 trillion, 21 trillion, even the events of October the 12th, nobody actually got fired. Because everybody says it was an intelligence failure. It was a failure of this, it was a failure of that. Okay, no, I get that. Could happen. Not a single person that I know of was fired. Not one. Not a one. There are intelligence failures all over the place. Bad things happen all the time, but not a single person is held to account. Not one. Not even a sham trial. Where you get a scapegoat. Any multinational corporation knows that you have to offer up a sacrificial lamb, to appease the stakeholders. That's what you have to do. Sorry, Dave. Give me the short explanation.
I was employed at one company once. I won't say what it was, who employed someone just so they could be the scapegoat, and they clearly had agreed to it. The short explanation: the money was not missing, just not tracked to acceptable accounting standards. Eventually, the accountants sorted out how it was spent, and they updated their records. Lies. All lies.
That actually is a lie. That did not happen. Okay, we know this because it's no longer than 2 trillion. No, 20 trillion. I'm missing. Not 2 trillion. 20 trillion. So they never updated. Nobody. I want to see a link to the article or the statement where it says, "Yeah, we've updated our records. Everything is fine." So we know this is BS. We know this is BS. What? Sorry.
It's all right. You become very animated when you're defending it. From their perspective, of course. Truth behind the quote. As it stands, the cannot track quote was true, but 2.3 trillion was never missing. Once again, they're focusing on that. The interpretation of the quote does, of course, have some grain of truth in it. Millions, maybe even billions of dollars go missing after a fashion due to accounting discrepancies, and perhaps even some illegal actions. But it certainly does not swear 2.3 trillion.
So that's right. It's 20 trillion now. So correct. It certainly is not 2.3 trillion. It's 20 trillion. So this is really, it's really upsetting me, because I was looking high and low for an explanation for the missing monies, right? I mean, we talk about black budgets here and what it all means and where does the money come from? Well, this is one avenue of acquiring those kinds of, because you have to understand one thing again, none of this money is real. So we're living in an amazing made-up world of finance, which is, I wish I had thought of it, because if I had, I'd be sitting back, and all my generations after me would be sitting back for 1,000 years to come, because nothing is going to knock me off my throne, right? This financial, this monetary system that we're living in is brilliant in its conception. Okay. Yeah. Well. Yeah. Clearly, it's the green shows. What?
Yeah. Look up that definition. You're right. You're so right. But it wasn't until the Snowden released some information, which shone some light on what this all means. So the Metabunk shone some light. Yeah. So the Metabunk team did the best thing they could to try and quell the interest. Poorly, they did their best, but it's still poor. They did their best to attempt to quell it. But when I read through, just like as you did, Meki, their feeble case that it's misinterpreted money. It's only transactions, and it was fixed, and they told everyone, which isn't true, just to make this go away. Now, Meki, if I had my sheeple hat on, my sheeple clothes, and I read that, I'd just walk away going, I'm happy. Look, they've fixed it. I'm a fixer. Yeah. What political clown says I'm a fixer? I fixed it.
Yeah. Hey, they updated their records. Everything is good. Oh, whew. Back to my Diet Coke. I'm okay. Are you okay?
Unfortunately, it's now 10 times bigger, and there's still no reasonable explanation outside of black budgets. Which, Meki, if they can total up the amount that they can't total, right? Does that make sense? So that they've got an ability to say how much they can't find. Yeah. This is how much we can't find, right?
I want to. Yeah, go on.
And therefore, that's enough. So we told you what you can't find. It's all good. And then Snowden comes out and goes, well, this is actually associated with something, and now we've got something to land it both together.
So the article we just shared with you from Metabank actually has a discussion stream underneath it, and I didn't see it before. I didn't see it. No, it's really brilliant. I didn't see it before. So Mick West, who actually wrote this for Metabank, he was one of the chatters took the quote, the 2.3 trillion was located, and the chatter Alchemist here says, and he's banned. He's now banned. The Alchemist is banned. I love it. Ask the question: what's the source for this? What is your source for the assertion that the 2.3 trillion was allocated? Was located, was found. So Mick West responds with a link. It's the www.defense.gov news. It's a PDF file, right? So Alchemist goes there and go to the link and says, where does it say that they located and tracked the 2.3 trillion? And Mick West in response says, it doesn't say they lost it in the first place. Nobody does. So why would they say they found it? It explains what the situation is. And Alchemist says, it says they couldn't account for it, but said that it was located. And then Mick West responds, located in the poor quality accounting. A poor choice of words, perhaps, but by located I mean that it was not lost in the first place, just not properly accounted for. If money was actually missing, then there would be a hole in the balance sheet. The accounts balanced fine. They just did not have all the precise details of transactions. If you don't have the details of transactions, they can't balance fine. Mm-hmm. Okay? And then the Alchemist goes on, Mick claims all the money is there on the balance sheet. Are you sure about that? Show me those balance sheets where you've learned this info. And no more responses from Mick West. And Alchemist is now banned. He's banned from the site. He's no longer allowed to post.
That sounds like my experience with the church, Mickey. You ask too many questions and they don't invite you back again.
I know. So in fact, Mick West didn't. Oh, here you go. No, there was something here. He no longer responded to much of it. It's amazing, and that he he said a lot of things in the banking article, right? And they were just simply not correct.
Yeah.
And then the alchemist calls him out on it, and he gets banned from the site. So this is what we're dealing with here, and this is what we're dealing. And I again, this is the year of high strangeness, right? We're dealing with this on every level of enterprise, on every level of research and science, on every human endeavor. Bones are missing. Archaeological evidence is fudged. Information is not released. Evidence is obfuscated. False explanations are given. Things are simply not talked about. Silenced into death. Okay? If you don't talk about something, if you just simply don't respond, silence is deadly, right? Silence is deafening, but it's also deadly because there's no discourse. You can make assumptions. You can talk about stuff, but they just call you crazy conspiracy theorist. And it is great to see this in action. I mean, this is probably one of the best case studies you could possibly have. Alchemist is asking reasonable question. I mean, okay, you said it's been found. Where does it say it's been found? Oh, no, what I meant is it was never actually missed. Oh, okay. So the balance sheets are balancing, you say. Okay, so can you show me that information? Mm-hmm. Silence.
Banned.
And banned. Banned. It's like, shut up!
Yeah, that's right.
No, you shut up. And so again, I'm with the alchemist. I mean, I'm okay with, if there's look, I don't want things to go wrong. And neither does Dave. And I don't want to, I'm not looking for mysteries and conspiracies where there are none. Okay, because it's pointless. There's too much genuine mystery in the world to be misguided by red herrings and false information. It just, there's not enough time. So Dave and I have to separate the chaff from the wheat and bring you guys the true mysteries and the truly unexplained things. There's a whole bunch of stuff which we don't look at because I'm just going to say flat Earth here, right? So, but there's a lot of stuff that it simply doesn't. It's not valuable for our time to look into. This, however, is, and this also shows you how people that don't want to answer with you. Okay, so they asserted all along that the money was never missing. That's an assertion. That was never proven. It's just a statement they made. It was never missing. Based on what? Based on what? Mm-hmm. What's the proof for that particular statement? What is the proof? That's all the alchemist asked. Show me the proof. And when that turned out to be too difficult, what do? We ban the alchemists from any further discussion. Beautiful. Love it. Works really nice. Right? And he wasn't even trolling. There was no name calling, nothing. He just asked questions, and I read it out to you. That was pretty much what he said, right? So I've posted the link into the chat. It's part of the show notes if you're interested, as well. It's all there. Have a look at the actually Dave posted it. Thank you, Dave. So have a look at it. See what you think. But this is what I found all along and everywhere, right? The debunking sites give you a whole bunch of motherhood statements. Oh, everybody knows that, experts say this. Oh, it's common knowledge that. Motherhood statements that don't give you any concrete evidence. Right? Science is about evidence and provable things, right? If I have a question, right, I would like an answer that's sensible, not because the expert said so. Oh, it's common knowledge, Mackie.
Everybody
that's a weather
knows.
balloon. Everybody knows that. Everybody.
It's fact.
No, it's fact. It's a fact.
Just that they use the word fact in a sentence means usually what they're going to say is not fact. Or requires question.
Am I too emotional here? I mean, it's really upsetting to me. It truly is. No, but I am upset. I dread the day because my youngest daughter, so my eldest daughter just started school, kindergarten, and then my next, my second one will start next year. I dread the day. I disagree with the teachers. I dread the day when I have to go in and explain to them why my child believes a certain thing.
Oh, Mackie, I've got an example. I completely understand. Because yesterday I was at a hospital and my daughter was being treated. And when he said, look, I've got to go, it's the end of my shift, but there's another doctor coming on, just, hold on for a minute, and there'll be another doctor with you in a jiffy. And my daughter said, because of there was a context in the conversation about a conspiracy. And do you know what she said, Mackie? You're going to be so proud of her. She said, you need to look up the Taurid, the man from Taurid.
Oh, nice.
That's what my daughter said to the doctor.
Really?
And, yeah, absolutely, 100%, right? And he goes, how do you spell that? She said, Taured. Look it up.
Well done.
And then he looks at me before he gets a pen out and writes it on the back of his hand. And he looks at me and goes, is it a thing? And I said, oh, it's a thing, all right. Right? You need to look it up. Go home and have a look. And I was, it brought a tear to my eye. I was so proud.
I know, right?
Teaching your kids to question what's going on and be connected to this stuff, it's terribly important. It's for them to be able to be free thinkers. And watch out, the free thinking alarm will go off. Right? Demonetization.
Independent thought alarm. Independent thought alarm.
Let the hooks do their work.
They let you keep the little piece of brain they cut out. I call mine balls.
They let you keep it. And this is what we're talking about. So deplatforming, demonetization, social benefits from social media is a thing now, where if you post positively that supports the government, that you get social credit for it. Right, that's happening in China right now. It's a thing. Facebook. So just wait for this to be in your neck of the woods, because it's like this year. Right? That's a program they're testing to see how effective it is. You know, I've watched. There's the music. Wow.
Donate if you can. This is a fun video. Donate.
Stay tuned for a roundtable with Jer Bear. They're awesome. Become involved. See you next week.